Hello, everybody. Welcome to the second episode of HDCast. I'm your host, Hector Delgado Jr., and today is Friday, November 15th, 2019. And today we have quite a bit to talk about. We'll start off with Colin Kaepernick and the latest news on him, including his open workout this upcoming Saturday and my thoughts on the whole thing. And next, we'll touch on last night's Thursday Night Football featuring the Steelers and the Browns, which also featured a huge fight at the end, but we'll get to that later. And lastly, I want to talk quickly on the U of A basketball game. First things first, I would like to talk about the latest news on Colin Kaepernick. As many of you guys know, he has not played in the NFL for about 3 years now, but according to Kaepernick and his team, he has stayed ready by working out 5 to 6 days a week for the last 3 years, as well as keeping constant contact with NFL teams looking for a spot as a backup or anywhere. Colin has just stated that he just wants to play in the NFL again with no restrictions, which brings us to Saturday. This past Tuesday, the NFL announced that they would be hosting an open workout for Kaepernick in Atlanta on Saturday, where all 32 teams were expected or were offered an invite. There's currently reports that more than 24 teams will be showing up, so a vast majority sending representatives. And the NFL clearly stated that this is in no way a PR stunt to fix the idea that Kaepernick has been blackballed from the NFL. I happen to have some thoughts on that. I did stumble upon a thread on Twitter which casted some shade on the timing of the workout as well as the motives behind it. The thread noted that Kaepernick and his team were not informed of the workout by the NFL, including the date, the time, the location, until Tuesday when it was released to the public. And the workout was requested to be pushed back by Cap's team just so they can prepare a little bit better, but it was denied. But for me, that's not that big of a deal, just because they have been preparing for the last 3 years, so I think they're ready. But with that being said, the weird part for me is when the workout was actually scheduled. It was scheduled on a Saturday rather than a Tuesday, which on the thread said is a much more common day for free agent workouts. And this is because it is the easiest day for high-ranking officials to appear, including the head coaches, GM, and owners, as opposed to Saturdays when these same officials are finalizing game plans or traveling away. So to me, the lack of communication between Kaepernick and his team, as well as the odd scheduling, to me smells of forced and a rushed job, in my opinion. But I digress. At the end of the day, Cap does have an NFL workout with teams guaranteed to show up. I wish the best of luck to Colin, and hopefully I can report some positive news in the future. On to the next topic, the last night's Steelers and Browns game, with the big fight at the end of it. But like I said, we'll get to that a little bit later. First, the game. The Browns beat the Steelers 21-7 and improved to 4-6, while the Steelers fall to 5-5. Now, let me just say first that the score makes it look like the Browns played well, but in my eyes, that was not the case. The score doesn't show that the Steelers were decimated with injuries, including injuries to their star receiver, Juju Smith-Schuster, as well as James Conner, and a few others lost to injury. And for a young rookie quarterback like Mason Rudolph, it is hard losing your top two weapons like that. Also, a very typically solid offensive line struggled heavily against the aggressive Cleveland pass rush. And I will offer credit to the Browns front seven for pressuring the quarterback so well. With all that said, Mason Rudolph did look very bad. He did not play well. He just looked so unsure of himself, and that could be in part to losing his top receiver and top running back. But he also just looked like he was forcing the ball into places, into coverage where it shouldn't be. And on the Brown side, like I said, I liked their defense. They were really solid. They had 4 picks as well as 4 sacks. But offensively, I was not impressed. I do not like their play calling. I don't like that I don't think they have the offensive line to run the ball as much as they do. They had 35 carries for 104 yards, which is 3 yards per carry, which was actually less than the Steelers, which had a running back, and like I said, a struggling struggling offensive line. Sorry about that. And then for the Browns, their passing game is still struggling, which is tough because I like Baker Mayfield. I like the little weapons he has. I like Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, two great receivers, and they have two great running backs in Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. I really like what they're doing with it, but same thing, the offensive line and the game plan just isn't allowing Baker to have enough time or good passing opportunities, so they're still struggling there. Overall, I think the Browns continue to have a bad culture and just bad coaching. They had 8 penalties for 121 yards, which is double what the Steelers had, and less first downs than the Steelers' offense, which is really bad because they played very poorly. And back to the penalties, though. There was 3 penalties that really stood out for me. Number 1, there was a punt on a legal touch, and that was on the Browns. So for those of you who might not know, an illegal touch is when a player runs out of bounds and comes back into bounds to down the ball, and that is not allowed. You can't just go out of bounds and come back in and make a play. So that leads to me 2 things. Either 1, the player was unaware of the rule, or he just didn't care. Either way, I feel like that's a poor reflection on the special teams coach, keeping them motivated or keeping them informed. Number 2, there was a targeting call, which was clearly a targeting. It was head-to-head contact. It was very clear. The guy was bleeding on the side of the ear after that. But the Browns continue to argue the call, and some were actually seen cheering for injuring the other player. And that's just completely unacceptable, rivalry or not. And number 3, the big one. Myles Garrett, whom of which has already had a few issues this season, with a few altercations and had faced disciplinary action like fines, basically ripped off Mason Rudolph's helmet and hit him with it. It was crazy. And yes, the Steelers did have their own role in the fight. Mason might have started it, but either way, in my eyes, it was all on the Browns. And again, Browns players were seen cheering on the side for injuring the quarterback or whatever they were cheering for. Is unacceptable. Rivalry or not, completely unacceptable, and there's no room for it in professional football. 3 suspensions has been doled out, 2 to Steelers players and 1 to Myles Garrett, whom of which is probably suspended for the rest of the year and maybe even to next year. And lastly, switching gears on something a little more positive, the U of A basketball game against San Jose State. There's not much to say about it just because they faced a struggling program, San Jose State, who finished 4-27 last year and lost one of their top scorers. But overall, it was still a positive performance for the Wildcats. I took 2 things away from this game. Number 1, Zeke Naji, who has been very impressive in my eyes for the first 3 games. He's averaging 21 and 6 and also chipping in a block. And for his size, he moves very well, runs the floor well, and he actually finishes really well at the rim. Actually, last night, Nico Mannion threw a lob to him, and he finished it with like a 360 layup, which was pretty great. I look forward to continuing to see him progress as a freshman throughout the season. And number 2, this is a very deep, talented, and experienced team this year. The Wildcats can easily run a 10 or 11-man rotation, which they could not do last season. And they're led by 3 super talented freshmen, Nico Mannion and Josh Green, whom of which actually played together in AAU and trained together in Phoenix in the summers. And then Zeke Naji, like I just mentioned, very great. But vets like Jamal Baker Jr., Max Hazard, as well as Stone Gettings have been very impressive to me, and they're going to offer some very steady and reliable production for this team with that experience that they have. And not to mention returning Wildcats like Ira Lee, Dylan Smith, and Chase Jeter, all 3 of which have been very reliable and I liked very much last year. But the big X factor is Dotrieve. He is a returning sophomore this year who was suspended to start the year, but I feel like if he plays well, he can really take this team to the next level. The Cats will be challenged this upcoming Sunday against a typically well-coached New Mexico State, home of which is a tournament mainstay and controls the Western Athletic Conference. So we're definitely going to learn a lot more about this team and what they're capable of. With that being said, guys, that is all from me today, guys. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys like the show, subscribe, drop a like, a comment, and I'd really appreciate it if you guys can share the video, so we can help this channel grow. Thank you guys very much. I'll talk to you guys soon, okay?